Everyone, it's Nancy, the nurse practitioner here, and we're going to have another great video for you today. You know, advanced care planning is just as important as going to your healthcare practitioner for medical care. It's part of good healthcare. And so today we're going to talk all about that with my lovely friend, Robert Pitkofsky, who is an attorney through the NPA, which is the Nurse Practitioners Association, where I am a member and I am a nurse practitioner. And he is actually, what do you do, Rob, on the NPA?
So I am been proud to be NPA's corporate counsel since 2012.
And what does that mean? What do you do for us?
So I take care of nurse practitioners all over New York State, making sure that their member benefits and education programs are delivered to NPs from Chautauqua all the way to Carl Place and everywhere in between. It's a great organization, and I'm just so proud to support your profession, Nancy, which takes care of so many of our fellow New Yorkers.
And we need the support because it's hard out there. You know, we want to take care of people, but we need to be supported legally and professionally as well. So kudos to you, Rob. We're going to have a bunch of series, everybody, as we go. And if you're interested in any specific topics, you can also email me at nancythenp@gmail.com, nancythenp for nurse practitioner @gmail.com. Let me know what topics you like. I'll run them by Rob, and then we will be doing some more talks as well. But he's well known in estate planning in New York and New Jersey. He helps families that have disabilities and mental health challenges. He obtains guardianship. He's lovely. Rob does great stuff for all of us. And so we're going to get right to the chase. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what is a healthcare proxy, what is a healthcare directive, what's the difference between them, how do you take care of your documents, and where do you keep them? And then I'm just going to hit him with a bunch of questions. So here we go. Let's start with the first one. What is a healthcare proxy, Rob?
So a healthcare proxy is a person. This is a loved one. This is a dear person who you trust to make healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to make them for yourself.
Okay. And who can serve as a proxy?
Right. So oftentimes, of course, it's going to be a spouse, which should be identified in a document. So that way that's clear. But what I always say is that anybody above the age of 18 can serve as your healthcare proxy. So who should this be? Well, they may literally have their life in their hands, I should say. So it's going to be a child, it's going to be a sibling, it's going to be a dear friend, somebody who you can have a very deep conversation and know that they're going to carry out your wishes and that you trust them with that information.
Okay, so while we're at that, if you picked an 18-year-old person who's still kind of young, although maybe mature, but there's an emotional component that may be not quite there, how do you feel about an alternate on this
Absolutely.
proxy?
I'm a big fan of making certain that the documents, whatever you decide to do, are flexible. So that way you are, let's say, naming your spouse. And if you name that 18-year-old, whether they're able to, to take on that role or not, it's important to have that conversation with them to understand whether they have the maturity, quite frankly, to handle that decision. And then if you decide to not choose the 18-year-old, your 18-year-old daughter, let's say, in that role, that you can have a conversation with them and say, look, you're 18. I want to, I am saying that, that your aunt should be responsible, but I can revisit this at a later time, when you get a little bit older, to make sure, again, that there's that conversation.
People get inundated with papers. One thing I did get, because I'm a parish nurse now over here in Connecticut where I live, from this meeting I had about doing directives and helping people with them, is the appointment of my healthcare representative, which is the same as a proxy, correct?
Indeed, yes, it is.
And it's a one-page form. And by the way, everyone who knows me now, I have a facebook.com/caregiver success page, and I put a lot of stuff there for you after a video that you can download and print. This one's really cool because here you go. Here's your proxy. It's a one-pager. You don't need to have a lawyer. No offense, Rob. And your witnesses cannot be the same as the proxy, and they must be over 18 years of age. Okay.
Great.
So
it's a great point, actually, especially in terms of the witnesses. I'd say, if you're going to be doing it on your own, to make sure that the witnesses are not named as
it can't
proxy.
be.
That way there's no conflict. You want to make sure that we're always making documents that aren't going to be challenged.
Well, I've been asked to be the witness in a home
Of
signing.
course, that's a great idea.
Because they're a clinician, and I'm like, sure, I'll just be your.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And speaking about questions, I found another cool thing called conversation cues.
Ah,
And this one says, how important is it? Somewhat important or not important? And here's like two of the questions. Do not be short of breath. Is that important to you? You do not want to hallucinate. Blah, blah, blah. To say goodbye to family and loved ones. How important is that to you?
wow.
And this
Wow.
was really neat. So I'm going to put that up there. And I got this from the parish nurses too, because you know, you could give this to the 18-year-old and just, she could put it in her drawer and every now and then look at it quietly after mom filled it out and say, oh, I just want to make sure I understand what mom wants in my own space to see. When I'm ready, I'll help sign and be a proxy and blah, blah, blah. But at least she knows what she wants.
That
This
is
is so cool.
That is really a cool tool. I think
Yes.
the most important thing, that in terms of all of this is communication, right? That's really key. Having conversations with clients all the time about this, it gets icky, it's getting medical, people get very upset about these things, but it's part of the life cycle, right? And so we want to make sure that at some point, unfortunately, we may not be able to make these decisions. So having tools like that and having those conversations with our loved ones, whoever those proxies are, and thinking about that and putting them in that role is really, really important to do. So I love tools like that. That's great.
And you know what?
That's a great link.
It's been thought of. And I'm just going to share one more thing. I have a woman from Australia I did a video on, and she was a funeral director.
Okay.
And she said people would show up at the funeral and the kids would all argue what dad did for a living and who his friend was and his nickname and blah, blah, blah. So she made these little conversation cards, it's like play cards today and do 3 cards and put them away. And then she has an electronic book and you can write in, what are your wishes? And then one was about your life story. They're really neat.
That's really deep. That's beautiful.
So then you can make a Shutterfly book, or something.
Yeah, Shutterfly.
Everybody gets one for Christmas.
And you make up playing cards, like off you go. That's great. That's
then you make.
That's really
nice.
We
got to go on here.
You got to go on, but I'm enjoying that. That's really welcome. No, it's great, Nancy, because these topics are really challenging. People I've been putting this off for years. If I had a nickel for every time, that somebody said that to me. I know I have to do this, Rob, but I didn't want to deal with it. So things like this are really important, and it's.
Well, you know what you do? You say, let's just do 3 cards, and then you put it away. And then the next week, let's just do 3 more cards.
Just a little bit, exactly. Yeah. And so it breaks it up.
Yeah,
I love it. I love
getting
it.
There.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, you don't get it done, right? It doesn't get done.
It doesn't get done. This is the type of thing that doesn't get done. And then, of course, when it doesn't get done, and I'm sure you've seen it, Nancy. Oh, as a healthcare provider and et cetera. You have a family that's standing around a hospital bed, end of life. They're looking at each other. They don't know who and they don't know what. And it's really sad. And sometimes I get that call and they're like, what am I supposed to do? And let's just say it results in a lot of problems. And so let's plan. Let's be positive. That's why I really love your approach. And getting this information out to folks, because it's really vital.
So you said about the healthcare proxy. Now we have this little piece of paper. Well, I drove my mother-in-law up from Florida, and she actually died 6 weeks later after she moved in with us from a brain aneurysm rupture. Of course, she wasn't carrying this on. She was on a ventilator in a Pennsylvania hospital. And we called up the hospital. I said, we're so glad you called because we had no one to call and we didn't know who was her proxy. Oh. And my husband's her proxy, but we didn't have any papers. But she was brain dead. And the question was, would you like to come in and pull, the respirator off of her and say goodbye?
Sure.
And so because she was brain dead, we knew where we were going with this. And so the hospital was very much at rest. There was no legalities. There was no problems with who's pulling the plug. She was going to die anyway. So, but for other people who slip and fall, they come up from Florida, they don't have the form, you're the proxy, but you have no proof. What do we do about that? Do people carry these in their wallets, in their persons and they're, tell me about this form again.
Yeah, so
Proxy.
so the proxy, and I wanted to mention also about obviously the healthcare directive, which
We're going to get to
obviously,
that in a
which you're
second.
going to get to that in a second. But in
Yeah.
terms of the proxy,
Mhm.
number one, it's obviously making sure that folks know. We already spoke about communication; they have to know. Number two, how does that get done? Well, if you go on a trip, right? Maybe you want to take a copy. I
Okay.
know it's whatever else you have. It maybe you have the envelope, right? And you stick it in your luggage, and maybe you stick it in there and you leave it in your luggage if there aren't
That's a
changes.
great idea.
You know, because if you leave it in your luggage, you don't have to think about repacking it, and people don't want to think about that. So, and if there aren't major changes, so maybe you keep a copy there. You may also want to keep a card. So some organizations actually have a card, which says, which will, or you can laminate a card. So when somebody's looking through, and they can actually look and say, oh, well, you know, my healthcare proxy is, the document is here, you know, et cetera. And hopefully not in a safe deposit box, especially with this document, because let's think about it. That means maybe maybe your loved one isn't in the state and doesn't have the ability to get into a safe deposit box. You could do all the planning in the world, but
Yeah.
it's not going to mean anything. So it's important to make sure that, again, that it's accessible, that it's, and folks know that, to be able to look for it. And again, obviously having those communication is
Okay, so let's go back just a second for that, because here's the part
for
of
sure.
preparation. If you're going to go and do these forms and you've made somebody your proxy and you have a directive done, the copies of that should go right to that proxy to have them either scanned and emailed to them, a copy put in an envelope they can have and have on their person.
Absolutely.
Actually, we have smartphones now. You could have lots of stuff on your smartphone. I could take a picture of this form. As a matter of fact, my mother-in-law, while she was on a respirator, her insurance cards, nobody could find them. Well, I had a picture of them on my phone. So there's a lot of things you can do, as long as you don't throw your phone down the toilet, but things are on the cloud, whatever. So we can always find these things, or even put it back on your computer and put a little folder, mom's folder. There's always a way to help that crash and burn path that we all take.
So that way you're not panicked, right? Exactly. It's just having
Yeah.
things duplicated. We making, there's paper, but when we digitize, when people know where things are,
Right.
it's really, it makes all the difference in the world.
And you know what it does to the family? It reduces the burden and the arguing and the stress and the power play, the alpha family member.
Around the hospital bed. We were just talking about, for example, that's like worse, but
it
is a nightmare.
Yes.
And people have to recover in a lot of cases from the scene that occurs around that sort of a hospital bed when the planning is not done. Exactly. I don't mean to be whatever, like it really breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because I litigate too. And it's not pretty. So nobody wants to be in that circumstance.
So we have 7 brothers and sisters in my husband's family, just real quick. So when we called and we got in the car and it was a 4-hour ride and he was the proxy and we were waiting, we got there, the relief on the doctor's face that we were in charge now. They brought the chaplain in, we prayed over mom, we took the plug off, we called all the family members, everybody hugged us. And it was a beautiful, beautiful time because everything was already set in motion and we knew who was in charge. But so everybody, please, 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 I'm one of 7 and so is my husband. There's a lot of trouble out there. Make it easy. Just let the person who's in charge, who's competent, make that decision now so that everybody's doing what they're wishing. And you could not want anything they want to do, but you got to do what they say because that's what they want.
That's the important thing about a proxy. They want what they want, and that's why it's important, not just the loved one.
Yes.
It's the loved one that will do what you want. It's your life. It's your life.
Yes. I don't want to do that. Okay. So real quick, we're going to go on to question number 2. Right. What is a healthcare directive? We're sort of in there already. So
absolutely. So we talked about the proxy, and the proxy is directed. Who directs them? You direct them. The directive are the directions to the proxy about what your healthcare decisions should be in a variety of circumstances. Nancy, you just showed that chart. We talk about organ donation and artificial nutrition and CPR and end of life and all kinds of things. So that way you're able to be in control. You think about these topics while you can, and it's nice and quiet, and you're not faced with the the crisis,
Right.
in that way. And then you obviously through conversation and through the document itself, you can then direct the proxy about what your wishes are.
So I just want to make a point to everyone. I did something called the POLST, the POLST, Physician Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment when I worked in New Jersey. I was doing wellness exams. And it's a one-pager, and it's in bright green. And the first question in the line is, what's your quality of life? What do you want now? And the person was still riding a bicycle. They were 78. And then the next person came in a wheelchair. So everybody's wishes of their time now and future can change. I loved it because every single line lets you go down. Like the guy on the bicycle definitely wants to be resuscitated. He would like a G-tube temporarily. And if he needs to have a trach because he's going to fall off his bike, but he'll be okay, then he's going to want it for 6 months or less or temporary. But the guy in the wheelchair had Parkinson's. He didn't want to, he couldn't speak, blah, blah, blah. His version of what he wants for the rest of his life may be different. And he could have had a stroke after the Parkinson's, and then he could rip up this pulse and say, now I want a DNR. Do not resuscitate me. So this one form was a rip it up. You see your clinician, they explain to you what is a G-tube. What does artificial nutrition really mean? Once you put a tube in somebody, can it be taken out? If they want you to. I mean, I had a guy, Barney, he was 100 years old. And he says, Nancy, I can't swallow anymore. I said, Barney, you're 100. Do you want to have, okay, I want a G-tube. When he was 102, he says, Nancy, I don't want the G-tube anymore. I said, I can't do anything. If it falls out, we can just, pray over you. But he wanted me to take it out. So he died at 104 and he was miserable for 2 whole years. Anyway, I'm making a point. Really think about what you're deciding on, because your wish may not be what you really want.
What you want, absolutely. I mean, a
So
lot of
ask
those
the questions. That's why you don't want to fill out these forms and you don't know what artificial nutrition is without knowing what artificial nutrition is. So
Yes.
Ask the questions. Okay.
Very important to ask the questions, and to bring, for example, again, I send folks back, when we're doing healthcare directives, to the questions are there, and to talk to, again, your loved ones and your medical provider. It's really, really important. So that way we can inform you. All of these documents that are being drafted, or whether you're filling them out on your own, are your wishes. And I think this is really empowering. So take control and really give that some thought, because I think it'll make your quality of life better, and obviously it'll also ease your loved ones as well.
So where do we get a healthcare directive? Sorry, I'm running over you. Where do we get a healthcare directive, Rob? I mean, I know you sent us to the ABA.
I did, yeah. So there are forms out there. We do have I did provide the American ABA is the American Bar Association. It's a national association of lawyers. They have a great toolkit through their Committee on Aging, and that's a place to go. There are a variety of forms. You'll also find, and this question that does come up often, when you enter a acute care facility, what happens? And it's like, well, I've been in there, and they put this in front of me, and I'm on a stretcher, I'm on a gurney, and there's registration, and they give me this form. And the form says that the living will, and it says, and it probably, do you have a healthcare proxy, and these sorts of things. Those, first of all, there's nothing wrong with those documents, but probably when you're going into the hospital for a procedure, or God forbid, cardiac event, or whatever reason, you may not be in the best state of mind to answer those questions.
Yeah, scary.
So it's better than nothing. Yeah. And it does expire when you leave, but it is it is available. But it is better, obviously. Hopefully, you'll be accompanied by an advocate or somebody that's that's with you. That'll say, oh, but wait a second. She does have that. She's done that work. I know that there's a proxy, either so et cetera. So if they're under anesthesia, then there's a procedure that can be, done. Again, it's empowering you before the crisis.
So we have a bag. If you're we have a boat. We have a bag. If the boat's going down and you have a fire on the boat, it's the grab bag. It's a bag that has your license. You throw your keys in there, your license, your
Cool.
boat registration. You have your inhaler, your meds. It's like it's your go bag to take with you on the dinghy to get away from there before you all blow up.
Oh my God.
So it could be almost like a bag. See, this is another great Christmas gift, or Hanukkah gift. It could be hung near the wall with all the things in it, and you grab the bag and go. And it could even have mom's name on it, and it could be in script and be really nice. Hey, we got a patent, something like that. And then they grab
Cool.
it and go, and the papers are all there.
And they're all there.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like we were saying with the luggage, we said
Yeah.
it with the luggage. So it's the
Yeah.
same kind of concept. Put it in there. Of course, it should be looked at if there's life events, people, change, etc. But generally, having that in there will be helpful. Like, and that way it's a little bit more set it, forget it, in terms of that.
Yes.
And so that way, at least it's on your person. You're not walking with it in your pocket, but it's, it's in a bag, it's in a luggage, that way it's accessible and it can live. It's a living document. These are living
Yes.
documents.
Yes.
This isn't like a like a will or end of life document, etc. This is a living document that may need to go into effect quickly in terms of a crisis or an accident or injury.
Okay, so the one other thing that gets me a little leery is that every state has their own directive, correct?
They do.
So when my mother-in-law died in Pennsylvania, but she lived in Florida, she had a Florida directive, which of course was in her lockbox in my house, because she left to go visit her kids, but she didn't bring her box with her. She was gone for 2 weeks. She died while away. The box is in my room. I actually told her, leave the key to the box before she left, because she just moved into our house. I took the key, we went in, we found the papers, and we took them with us to Pennsylvania. But that was because I'm a nurse practitioner and I already was thinking like that. And if you're a caregiver for a long time, everybody, you learn from your mistakes. I just learned because I went through this gazillion times, like you, Rob, for legal matters. You know what to say right off the top, but a lot of people don't know to think about that. They want to get in the car and get to mom on a respirator, but I'm like, where's the key? Let's get the papers,
Wow.
So people, and the other thing about the suitcase, I would tape that envelope in the suitcase so it's not underneath the jewelry and the stockings, and it says in maybe a red envelope, it's care
I
direct.
like that. Yeah, absolutely. Have a little fun with it and just make sure, again, you want that visual, et cetera. Because again, you have to assume that you, person making the proxy directive, are not going to be directing them.
Yeah, you're not going to be
So you're going to have somebody opening the bag,
yes,
rifling through.
Yeah.
I know, it's a little hard to think about, but rifling through to try to find information to be able to help you. So obviously anything that we can do to make it
so let me
easier.
just real quick, because the little cards, where do you get the little cards you can carry in your pocketbook?
Yeah, so you may be able to get that. There's some organizations that have things like that. You may be able to check with hospice, like your organization, as well. Again, maybe the bar, your local bar association always touted, et cetera. But that those types of organizations are going to be able to help you with that, or you can make your own, as well.
Okay, I'll see what I come up with, everybody, on that, because then at least if they find your wallet and you're on the side of a street, they're going to look through to find out your name. They'll find the little card. They'll say, oh, Mary doesn't want to be resuscitated. And she's Catholic. She wants a priest and other things like that. Really, really nice, because she's talking to you from her wallet. Good stuff.
Basic, boom, boom, boom.
Very, very, very good. Okay, so we talked about that. One thing I'm looking for, everyone, is something on a smartphone. We're going to keep looking for something that would make it easy so that your daughter in Oklahoma has what you have when you're in a hospital in Washington, D.C. And this way everyone can. Okay, next question. Can it be revoked at any time, Rob?
Yes.
Yes,
it can.
Proxy.
Yes, it can. These documents can be made one day and ripped up the next. The only, obviously, to revoke a proxy, somebody that's doing that, it's just a matter of sending them an email or a note, and informing them that they are no longer proxy if there's a change there, and then literally physically just ripping it up and preparing a new one. So they are very, very easy that way.
Okay, then this is a really hot question, but can a healthcare proxy override the patient?
It depends. You're gonna get the lawyer answer. It depends. It depends. Why does it depend? because the patient, we have to determine whether the patient has it's called the mental capacity to be able to make decisions. So depending on, and again, I'm speaking to a healthcare provider, depending on the the abilities of that patient at a given time, they may or may not have that capacity. Now, if there's, if they're able to express that, they may have to go to the hospital, and there's committees, and et cetera.
Is it a committee or a court order, or what happens?
Right. That's kind of where I'm going. So if they're able to that and they determine they're competent, that's one thing. If they're not, obviously, if you have the healthcare proxy and directive, then obviously they're seamless. If they don't, and there's a real question about this, right, it may end up in court. Somebody may have to bring a petition to a court somewhere and ask for the authority. A court may have to order this. Nobody wants to be in that situation. That's why we plan. That's why we're making those envelopes, those red envelopes that we're sticking in bags, that, and we're having conversations with our loved ones. Because there's always the last resort is, well, we can let the court decide. That's all lawyers are going to say. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's true, by the way. That is, but nobody wants to be in that situation because, again, the scenario is, it's horrible, right? We have somebody that's laying in a bed, not able to make decisions. And then obviously all of this, maybe time passing and then, oh my gosh, having to hire a lawyer to go, much easier to plan.
It is. So where do people get this healthcare proxy from? Any state? Actually, anywhere all over the world. I guess you got to call your local, go online to your local county government.
So yeah, I don't know necessarily whether you'll find that county government. You'll want to look at again, end of life organizations such as hospice could be. There are community organizations that support. Again, speaking with hospitals, acute care is a possibility. Talking to your bar association. It's probably going to be not government as much.
Okay.
If it's just going to be a layperson kind of getting that, it's probably going to be more organizationally driven. But you do want to make sure that you're using the right one for your state. They are, transferable. Again, they should be honored, full faith and credit. There is the ability, like if you're domiciled, you live in New York, and you're traveling to California, they are recognizing, they will recognize that.
Right.
But if you're living in a place and this is, et cetera, you should follow the rules.
So I have another
likely
idea.
You're going to be using your acute care, your hospitals in, your state where you're living.
And your healthcare practitioner. You could call your local office and ask them, do you have the local, the proxy and the
directive?
Well, the directive for us. The other thing is I'm a parish nurse. Their parish nurses are all over the world and they work in the communities and they're just not parishes. They're in synagogues. They have them for people who are Hindu or whatever. And they may have the idea where to get that because they're also involved in end of life spiritual issues, for people and their
absolutely
community.
It's a great, yeah, exactly. So it's going to be faith and not for profit and charitable and and organizations
social
that
workers
support this.
Social workers, if you know a good social worker in your state. Okay, just so everybody knows where to go to get this.
Absolutely.
It's not a pie in the sky, hard to find stuff. So we did not ask what is a power of attorney, and that's got to come up because
absolutely. So we talked about healthcare proxies, we talked about healthcare directives, which are focused about empowering somebody to make healthcare decisions. So the power of attorney is for the same, it's very similar, but it's only in terms of financial decisions.
Okay.
In terms of real property, in terms of bonds and stocks and those sorts of things.
So let's say financial,
and making those sort of decisions, being able to sign contracts on your behalf. It's called an attorney in fact. So literally they would be able to step in and sign as if they were you. They are really, really powerful documents, as the healthcare proxy and directive is on the healthcare side. They're very powerful documents, but can be very helpful because obviously if you're unable to make those decisions, and let's say monies have to be moved, bills have to be paid, they're able to make those, be able to make those decisions again on your behalf. And again, there needs to be that communication. They need to make sure that they're not going to sell your house out from under you, obviously. With that.
So that's a good point. Now here we go back to my mother-in-law. Okay, the one thing she did do before she moved up here is she made her two older children the power of attorney financially for her checkbook.
Yes. Oh,
We at least were able to pay for her house in Florida. Oh, however, you know, she didn't, her husband died 3 years ago, and she didn't change her will. And there was nobody to back up on the house mortgage, whatever, on the title. So the car is sitting in our driveway with her name on it, going to probate in Florida. The house is in probate in Florida.
oh.
The 7 children are all involved, you know, now, but she did put my husband on the checkbook. So at least we were able to pay all her bills. So we were ready to do all this. As we were driving up, we made a list of all the things I was going to do, but she says, I'm going off to visit my kids for a while and see all 7 of them. She drove all over the place, New Jersey, New York
Wow.
State. She was 87. She drove everywhere, but then she died before she got back. And the list was still in on my wall in my kitchen saying, Mom, we have to go over your will and fix it. We have to change the titles on things. Blah, blah, blah. So you know what? I did a video, everyone, on expect the unexpected. And it was mom died, but she got to see all her kids and she got to so about it. And we're not all arguing. Thank you, God. But it could have been worse. So if you guys know you're in for a real ride, make sure you have mom change things. You know, like if you know she's getting ill and she's getting more feeble and she's getting, even though she's driving, she's on our Facebook page, have that talk and maybe get somebody that she trusts on the titles and things just to make sure, and maybe even have it written that all 7 children are involved, but that you're in charge of this and your name is on the house now, so we don't go to probate. Because she'd be kicking herself right now knowing that we all went to probate for her, because she did not want all this.
It's just an organization. It's just organizing things.
Yeah.
Things will work themselves out.
Yes,
right?
They
They will.
will.
The question is, right, is it going to be
easy?
Yeah. Or is it going to be hard? And
Right.
as you said, Nancy, thank God, everything is happy and people are, you know, people agree, et cetera. But obviously when there's the uncertainty plus other more difficult relationships, which again, I
you
see
want
often.
to not talk to your brother ever again for the rest of his life because you're fighting over mom's money. I mean, honestly, it's just not cool.
It happens.
All right.
You know,
And it happens.
it's sad.
We're only on this earth for a short time. So let's just be happy. And, you know, as Bob Marley says, be happy. Okay. So the last most important question, I should have music at the end of this. Come on.
You should, absolutely.
Like
we got to get
little
yeah.
bongo drums or something. The last question is, what is the most important part of identifying a proxy and directing the proxy with a healthcare?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, when I'm speaking to clients or speaking to people about this, the most important thing you need to do is talk. You need to communicate. You need to communicate and have conversations with everybody. These documents are not, they're, as I said before, they're living documents. We need to make sure that people know where they are, what's in them, what they mean, and most importantly, what those wishes are. What are your wishes? They won't be able to carry it out if they don't know. Whether, you know, maybe you're not going to get into every single scenario in a directive.
Exactly.
But if you have these conversations, the document will have a life of its own, and it will be, you know, and they will, you know, because you've chosen wisely, the proxy will respect your wishes. They'll respect the directive, and then also obviously whatever those wishes are. So I would say communication is absolutely the most important thing that, you know, is part of the whole process.
Okay, so let's just sum this all up, everyone. You know that at the facebook.com/caregiver success page, I'll put some of some good links for you, some of these nice, cool forms that you can download and use. Please get started and do this. You know, maybe it could be like we said, a graduation present, a wedding present, Christmas present. So, hey, so I'm so happy, Rob, that you joined us.
Robert, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Attorney. We're going to do more videos for you, everyone. It's Nancy, the nurse practitioner. Hey, if you like me and what we're doing for you on my YouTube channel, please subscribe to Caregiver Success. And don't forget about my book, my big fat book I wrote for you about how to be a successful caregiver. It's on Amazon and it's also on caregiversuccess.com. And it's also in an ebook. So take care, everyone. Till the next video. Bye.